From immortal Pokemon to even Pikachu, these are 22 Pokemon that legit died in the anime. Before I get to Pikachu, I gotta tell you about the death that broke my heart into 1,000 pieces. This particular death broke not only my heart, but also this poor guy's heart. You see, in the 21st episode of the Sun and Moon series, Stoutland died of old age. And Stoutland, being such a darling, didn't want to hurt its bestie Litten with its death, so it decided to die off screen. Litten was actually sleeping when Stoutland slipped away to go die somewhere, so by the time Litten woke up, Stoutland was gone. And while Stoutland's death was heartbreaking, another Pokemon's death cut even deeper. See, in the movie Forever Celebi, Celebi died from too much strain on its little heart. Celebi wouldn't have died if it wasn't going up against a bad guy who wanted to use a black ball to transform it into an evil creature. Even though Celebi escaped this bad guy by traveling 40 years into the future, secured the protection of Ash and his crew, the bad guy still pursued poor Celebi and eventually captured it. He then transformed Celebi into an evil creature, controlled its mind, and used its powers to cause havoc. This led to a very tough battle, and at the end of it, Ash and his friends were able to break Celebi free from the bad guy's control. But as the war was over, and so was Celebi's life. Celebi's heart went through so much during the war that it gave up the ghost while in Ash's arms. They tried to save her in the Lake of Life, but it was a failed attempt. The only thing that saved Celebi from death was Celebi. Just like Celebi was the only thing that saved Zoroark from death. In the movie Zoroark, Master of Illusions, Zoroark sustained grave injuries while fighting bad guy Kodai. These injuries were so serious that they killed Zoroark. Zoroark's baby, Zorua, cried for her mama, but tears couldn't bring back the dead this time. Only Celebi could, by using the power of the time ripple, of course. And while Zoroark was getting saved from death, nothing could stop Lucario from sacrificing its life to save Mew in the Tree of Beginning and Lucario in the Mystery of Mew. I must confess, Lucario's death was hands down heroic. The writers really took their time in crafting out this interesting but tragic story. I call it tragic because unlike Celebi, Zoroark, and most of the Pokemon on this list, Lucario never got revived. You see, after Mew used its power to save Ash and his friends from getting eaten by this blog thingy, Mew in the Tree of Beginning got terminally ill. So to save both Mew and the tree, Ash and Lucario combined their auras to reverse the self-destruction. Lucario would still be alive if it didn't shove Ash away and become the sole sacrifice for the tree.
Lucario isn't gone. Its aura is with me.
I'll take Ash's word for it, but what I won't take is the death of Meowth, and neither would the producers because they removed any evidence of this death from the dub. In the 12th episode of the Sun and Moon series, Meowth died after he caught a glimpse of Mimikyu's true form without its trademark Pikachu costume. At least Meowth came back to life a minute later, exclaiming that he almost went to the great beyond again. But you know what dead Pokemon aren't coming back to life a minute later or even 100 years later? Sharpedos. What makes these deaths a bit funny is the fact that they are a reference to the real-life shark finning, a barbaric practice where wild sharks are caught and have their fins cut off, and the shark is then thrown back in the water to die. Sharpedo's Pokédex entry in Moon reveals that this Pokemon became a victim of overfishing because its dorsal fin is a treasured foodstuff. I now see what caused the death of countless Sharpedos in the Alola region. References are a cool way to kill off Pokemon, but a way cooler way would be to use flashbacks, just like they did for Volcarona. In Pokemon Black and White, we get introduced to a Pokemon champion named Alder. The thing about Alder is that his starter Pokemon, Volcarona, died from an illness. This death profoundly impacted Alder, just like Luxray's death impacted me. The I Choose You movie will always be dear to my heart for showing the last moments of a Luxray who died trying to protect its master Sorrel after Sorrel got lost in a blizzard. It was so hard for Sorrel to say goodbye to Luxray when he woke up because he woke up to find his Pokemon who protected him from the cold dead. I just hope Sorrel has moved on by now. I can imagine how heart-wrenching that must have been for him. I feel the same way when I look at my stats and see that 82% of people who watch my videos aren't subscribed. So fix that mistake right now and make me happy. Next Pokemon on our list is Darkrai. This is a Pokemon that holds the record for the most badass death on this list. In The Rise of Darkrai, all Darkrai Darkrai wanted was to save Alamos from getting destroyed by Dialga and Palkia, who were at war with each other. So when Palkia fired a deadly spatial wrench and Dialga shot a damaging roar of time, Darkrai got in the middle of it and absorbed these dangerous moves at full force, leading to his death. But then the unexpected happened, because see how he appears out of thin air to see the town he saved? I wish Latios came back like Darkrai did, because I still miss Latios. In Pokemon Heroes, Latios and Latias, Latios tragically sacrificed itself in a brave and heartbreaking act to protect an entire city. The story centers around a mystical item called the Soul Dew. This item can elevate water levels in Alto Mare Island up to the level that it can drown its residents. Of course, there was also Team Rocket, who wanted nothing more than to steal the Soul Dew for their own malicious purposes. As the story climaxed, Latios selflessly gave up its life, transforming into the new Soul Dew. This sacrifice ultimately saved the city and its sister, Latias, from destruction. Even though Latios is gone, I can rest easy knowing that it died a good death. Sadly, I can't say the same for Marowak, because Team Rocket killed Marowak. This death is one that I can't shake off my mind no matter how hard I try. In episode 2 of Pokemon Origins, when Red arrived at Lavender Town and visited the Pokemon house, he was told by Reina that the resident Cubone was nearly poached by Team Rocket before Cubone's mother, Marowak, intercepted the act, allowing Cubone to escape. Team Rocket got very angry by Marowak's actions, so they killed it with a stun baton. The harrowing encounter made Cubone rightfully hostile towards humans, but it later changed its stance after being reunited with the spirit of Marowak. Marowak is a star for what it did for its child, but what if I told you there is a Pokemon who died from being a literal star? This is Cleffa, and in the 83rd episode of Pokemon Journeys, the series, I found out from this lady, Tiara's mom, that Cleffa became a star in the sky. Even its Pokédex entry claims that it may be a reincarnation of one. Cleffa turning into a star made Tiara befriend Unknown and make a town in Johto have endless nights just so it could see its Cleffa again. And while Tiara had hopes of seeing Cleffa again, Amber, the little girl in the uncut story of Mewtwo's origin, had zero hopes of seeing her besties, Charmander 2, Bulbasaur 2, and Squirtle 2. These 3 Pokemon died because they were failed attempts at cloning, and it's all Dr. Fuji's fault. What kind of man clones his late daughter? And the worst part of all is, the subconscious of his daughter Amber, Amber 2, managed to create a remember place where she spent her time with Squirtle 2, Bulbasaur 2, Charmander 2, and Mewtwo, only for her friends to fade away into oblivion as they had perished in the real world. Amber 2 also disappeared alongside her besties, and so did Talonflame way back in the ancient past of the Kalos region. In the 5th special episode of Pokemon the series XY, The Legend of X, Y, and Z, there is a story about Jan, a man from Kalos' ancient past who sought to defeat Veltal to prevent a prophecy about Veltal destroying his home. When Jan encountered Veltal, he had his Talonflame battle it, but Veltal used Oblivion Wing to turn it to stone. The Talonflame fell to the ground from the air and shattered to pieces. Rest in peace, Talonflame. Your trainer didn't know any better. In the 12th episode of Sun and Moon series, Ash was accidentally brought back in time by a Celebi. While in the past, Ash encountered a totem Trevenant named Elder, who, after a series of circumstances, gave Ash a Firium Z crystal for his Torracat. Upon returning to the present, Ash discovers that Elder had passed away, with nothing but a tree trunk covered in weeds left in its place. But when Purple Gem Deoxys got destroyed by a Rayquaza, nothing was left in its place except its wounded body that regenerated 4 years later. And when Green Gem Deoxys' physical form was destroyed while inside a meteor, it remained dead. And those are not the only Deoxys that have died. This Deoxys' physical form also got destroyed in the 112th episode of the Diamond and Pearl series, when its meteor crashed on a deserted island. This Deoxys would be permanently dead if Piplup, some local water types, and Pikachu didn't come to the rescue. Speaking of Pikachu, did you know Pikachu is the first Pokemon to die in the entire series? He died in the Tower of Terror alongside his trainer. Ironically, Pikachu died getting shocked to death. Pikachu and Ash had crashed to the ground because they were tricked by Haunter and Gengar. This caused the walls and ceiling of the Raggedy Castle to crack open, a chandelier above them to fall, crush them, and shock them to death. A more shocking death would be the deaths that occurred in the lore of Raikou, Entei, and Suicune. A long time ago, a fire incident took place in the Ekrutik Brass Tower that led to the death of these 3 Pokemon. Thankfully, the legendary Pokemon Ho-Oh came down and revived them based on the 3 incidents that happened in the tower. Raikou represents the lightning that hit the tower. Suicune represents the wind and rain that took the fire out. And Entei represents the fire that burnt the tower. This is just the best trio ever! But there is another story about Entei you may not have known about. Did you know that Entei sacrificed himself to defeat the Unknown and restore everything to normal in the 3rd Pokemon movie? Entei got destroyed by what he was created by. But Hunter J's team got destroyed by Mesprit and Uxie. You see, in the 151st episode of the Diamond and Pearl series, Mesprit and Uxie took out Hunter J's ship's engines with future sight. The impact of the attack made her ship crash into the whirlpool of Lake Valor and explode. This takes a much darker turn when you think about all the captured Pokemon she still had stored on her ship. Just imagine how many innocent Pokemon were still on board when the ship went down. I can think of Ariados, Salamence, and Drapion. Just take a look at her face. She wasn't even scared at the point of death. Hunter J's death was well deserved if you ask me. She was just evil. Anyway, if you are a true Pokemon fan, you will definitely enjoy this video where I went over 40 Easter eggs you definitely didn't know about. See you there!